Fire is one of the tools of Scoutcraft. If you look in your Boy Scout handbook, fire is in Chapter 12 along with the other tools like rope, knots, lashing, knives, saws, and axes. In 1908, Jack London, a famous American author, who wrote The Call of the Wild and other stories about the Klondike Gold Rush, also wrote a number of short stories. One of his most famous short stories, To Build a Fire, is about a man new to the Yukon Territory, a tenderfoot as it were, who ventures out on foot alone with a large husky dog to meet up with some other men on the Yukon River. The temperature is 75 degrees below zero. An old man from Sulphur Creek warns him about the danger of traveling alone in such extremely cold weather. He ignores the advice and during the journey is soaked up to his knees. The story describes his effort to start a fire in order to dry his feet and moccasins and to avoid certain death. I don't want to ruin the story for you. You can read it online or listen to a 40-minute long audiobook available for free on YouTube. There's also a short movie. Let's get started. In the Boy Scout Handbook, we're told to gather three things: tinder, kindling, and fuel. Tinder is dry material that catches fire easily. Thin branches, pine needles, fluff from a seed pod, like milkweed, shredded bark, all make great tinder. Kindling is dry, dead twigs, no bigger than a pencil. And fuel is dry wood that is as thin as your finger and as thick as your wrist. The outer bark of grapevine also makes a great tinder. One of the best tinders is bark from a birch tree. And to build a fire, the man carries dry birch bark in his pocket. I happen to have a birch tree in my front yard, and I carefully took a little of the dead, dried, and loose bark for this video. As part of Leave No Trace, we should only use what we find on the ground and not strip trees of bark or limbs. However, in a survival situation in extremely wet weather, some of the best tinder can be found at the end of dead limbs in fir trees. Eastern hemlock is especially a good tree to find dead and dry tinder. If you do take tinder from a standing tree, take it from a number of different spots on the tree and from more than one tree. Under normal circumstances, there should be plenty of dead material on the ground for you to fill up a few baseball caps. Like it says in the Boy Scout Handbook, we're looking for 1 capful of tinder and 2 capfuls of kindling. The first step is to clear the area of any debris to get down to bare ground. Then place a long piece of kindling into the ground at an angle and start to stack other kindling around it, sort of like a lean-to. A rookie mistake is not to leave enough airspace around the kindling and the tinder so that it'll burn. There are 3 things that make a fire: fuel, heat, and oxygen. You need to make sure that the fire can breathe. Place the material with tender, loving care. The next thing you want to do is carefully place your tinder underneath and inside the lean-to, being careful not to disturb the kindling above. This is where the birch bark comes in really handy. You can start with that and then place some of the other pine needles and small twigs on top of it. Finally, gather up some additional kindling and maybe even some of your fuel wood. Have it nearby and ready to go. If you've done a good job, you should be able to light the fire with 1 match. A good fire will start without the need of additional effort on your part through either fanning or having to add additional oxygen or tinder to the campfire. Remember that the first step is to make a safe fire site, one on which nothing will burn except the fuel you feed the flames. It's a spot from which the fire cannot spread. Many camping areas have metal fire rings, grills, or stone fireplaces. Use these existing fire sites whenever you can. Always have a bucket of water nearby, just in case the flames start to spread. Continue to feed the fire with larger and larger fuel. Never make a fire larger than you really need. When you're done with your fire, use that bucket of water to put it cold out. Douse it really well. Stir the embers. You shouldn't feel any heat if you place your hand on or near any of the pieces. You can be sure that it's cold out then. And that's a proper way to build a fire using only one match to get it started. Have a great evening.